Welcome back to Bleeding Blue. My name is Justin. With me is one of my best friends, Snacks. This is a podcast called Bleeding Blue. It's about the New York Football Giants and its great history. Snacks, we're going to have a shorter episode today because what we want to do, we want to reflect and we want to remember. We didn't have an episode last week. That's because you were too upset about the Knicks, even though that's a lie. We didn't have an episode last week, but what we really wanted to do is we want to at least take a couple minutes today. Remember, reflect on Jim Fassel. He did pass away last week. It was 1 week ago, June 7th, 2021 on a Monday. So, Snacks, you really became a Giants fan at the start of the 2007 season. Jim Fassel was a coach for the Giants for 7 years, from 1997 to 2003. But obviously, the 2000 season was his most memorable year. So, Snacks, you feel a very strong attachment to Jim Fassel. He was your first head coach. So, give us some thoughts, and let's remember Jim Fassel for a couple minutes here.
Yeah. So, like you said, my fandom, I guess, really remembrance of where my fandom started and everything Giants was in 2000, that amazing year. And yes, he was my first coach, and I'm glad. When we spoke about like what we wanted to do this week, and I think it was just a no-brainer. We're a Giants history podcast, and Jim Fassel was a very big part of Giants history. So I think there's no better place than to kind of remember him here. And I, I was very shook, quite frankly. The tears flew. They were all day. I could barely work. I don't know why it hit me so hard. We haven't heard much about Jim Fassel. Me and you have mentioned him here. Hell, we've even made fun of him for the NFC, the NFC Championship
Yeah,
party they
so
threw.
actually, I mean, Snacks, Jim Fassel has been a huge part of this podcast so
He
far
has.
in terms of after rebranding it into a Giants history podcast. Like, sure, we've poked fun every once in a while of, Jim Fassel, but this is also, I think, who he is as just like a coach and why he's so different when you compare him to the rest of the coaches that kind of came before him and after him. When you compare him to the rest of the coaches in franchise history, he rented out a movie theater after the Giants lost the Super Bowl in 2000. And sure, you would have never done that, and a lot of people probably look down upon that. Like, you finish in second place then, but that is the type of guy that I think Jim Fassel was, and it's reflected in kind of how he's been remembered. I was not really a fan in 2000, but I've really have seen how he's been remembered, number one, and how he's been talked about, particularly in Ernie Palladino's "If These Walls Could Talk," which it has been so much about the early 2000 Giants. And I didn't
Mhm.
really predict our show to kind of go towards the early 2000s Giants so much, as we've kind of been going for over a year now. But the way that he was remembered is just nobody has said a bad thing about him. Nobody has said a bad thing about Jim Fassel. Everything has been overly positive. And Snacks, let me even ask you this, and I'll throw it back to you. I have a feeling, especially when you compare Jim Fassel to the rest of the coaches in franchise history, why do I have a feeling that Jim Fassel was the most relatable coach, like to relatable coach to like the fans, a man who's just very welcoming? Is that kind of spot on?
I feel like that is 100% spot on. So in our lifetime, well, you had Coughlin, Shermer, McAdoo, and then I had Fossil in there. And between the four of them, I mean, it's not even a comparison. Fossil's a guy you kind of want to just go hang out with. He seems like a very endearing person, very lovable guy. He had such a nice smile, and obviously, we will probably talk about it a little later, but his press conference tirade talking about going all in, which clearly sparked that team. But relatable is an accurate word. You had Coughlin, who was more like General Patton and like this strict, stern guy, and Shermer never came across like likable. You didn't really relate to Shermer, McAdoo talking about sex crazed lions like Jim Fassel. And then we know Parcells was of the same, Coughlin was of the same cloth as Parcells. So when you say the word relatable, Jim Fassel is probably by far the most relatable to us and to Giants fans as any coach that this team has had, and just a beautiful soul. And I think that you brought up the question, you would probably agree with that.
Yeah, and why I think you mentioned his famous press conference, which everybody replayed the clip this week. You
got the crosshairs, you got the laser, you put it right on my chest. I'll take full responsibility. I'm raising the stakes right now. If this is a poker game, I'm shoving my chips to the middle of the table. I'm raising the ante. Anybody wants in, get in. Anybody wants out, get out. Okay? This team is going to the playoffs.
So everybody's replayed that clip, and that's such a famous clip. We've talked about it before on this show. And I heard Michael Strahan talking about it. And why that was so unique for Fassel to say is the fact that he says, anybody who wants to get in, get in. Anybody who wants to get out, get out. I have a feeling that was kind of different compared to like his regular coaching style, where it was kind of in your face. It was in your face. Like, you want this, you better get in. If you don't want this, you better get the hell out, which I feel like that's why it was different for him. But also that's why Giants players really liked him, because he was very different from Dan Reeves, where Dan Reeves was the ultra disciplinarian. Parcells was a guy that was like, probably a disciplinarian too, more than anything, but he was also a guy that understood people as well. But that's where the Giants wanted to go to. They wanted to go to kind of a player's coach. Kerry Collins, off of footballs and life's scrap heap, got this guy, and really both of those guys turned around this franchise for a solid couple years, and it resulted in two of the greatest wins in franchise history. That is that NFC divisional game against the Eagles, where Jason Sehorn had that tipped interception and he runs it back. And then obviously snacks the game that you went to, the 41-0 NFC championship game against the Minnesota Vikings, which just being a part of that game plan and reading about that game plan and about how, we're just going to come out, we're going to throw the ball on offense. And Fassel was an offensive minded guy. He was an offensive minded coach.
Yes,
so we're going to come out there and we're going to throw the ball and we're going to outduel one of the greatest offenses in all time. Unbelievable. Unreal.
They outdueled them, that's for sure, by slapping them around 41-0. And it's funny, I guess people forget to realize that from 91 to when Fassel got there, that was a pretty bad stretch of Giants football.
Yeah.
And the Giants were not projected to do anything in Fassel's first season in 1997. And they went out there, they beat a 13-0 Broncos team. They went 10-5-1, and they won the NFC East in his first year.
And he won Coach of the Year his first.
Won Coach of the Year, yeah. And hearing what people, what players and coaches around the league have said about him, truly is a testament to the man and coach he was. And I think I tweeted out, it's almost kind of bittersweet in a sense that he's getting all these accolades and appreciation now that he has passed. But I do understand that that's what happens. Somebody passes, they aren't in the NFL for a while, or they're not in a respected sport, or you haven't seen them in the national spotlight in a while. That's when people really start to reflect on their opinions and everything of them. But I mean, we have sat here and we have talked about how great we thought Jim Fassel was, and just everything like that. So the fact that while he did pass, and at the very young age of 71, 71 may sound old, but it's a young age. And when he did pass, and to be able to see and hear his former players and just coaches around the league that just had such great words to say about him, really shows the impact that he made on a lot of people in this league, and a lot of players. Ernie Accorsi was on with the Michael Kay show that same day, and he was just going off on how nice of a man he was, how good of a man he was, how much the players loved him and respected him. And it's quite telling. And it's not just the man; he was a great coach, and like things get underlooked too. He hired John Fox and Sean Payton, who went on to be two of the better coaches in the NFL. So it's like, the guy knew what he was doing, and unceremoniously in 2003, when they just had a miserable year, he got fired with a few games left. And I think I may be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure he finished the year out, which is kind of unorthodox. You're fired, but you could finish the season. He meant a lot to me. He means a lot to this organization. I always think back on like what if on two separate games in the Super Bowl. I know we got our asses kicked by the Ravens, But that game changed when Jesse Arms or whoever it was returned an interception for a touchdown, and it got called back on a defensive holding. After that, it was a game over. So that's one play I think about a lot. And then you go to 2002 when they were beating the Niners by 1,000,000 points in the fourth quarter, and Trey Junkin completely botches the snap. That team was really good. They were 10-6. They fought their way back from a midseason collapse, and they were finally starting to click on all cylinders. So it's definitely those two games always just pop up in my head as kind of what ifs. And sorry, I'm rambling, but
No,
it's a very difficult loss, and I was stunned. I woke up and I had a text from my brother. It was like Jim Fassel died, and I just couldn't believe it. And I know Danny had texted us in our group chat, and I was just like, I was I don't think I got out of bed. I turned my work laptop on and I just worked from that. I was so demoralized, and I was stunned how hard it hit me. Like, and then very disappointing, but I will say, to start off my fandom with that 2000 season, and then having the 2002 season, which was a lot of fun. Thank you very much, Jim. And quick shout out to Big Blue VCR, who absolutely did a phenomenal job of kind of timelining Jim Fassel's tenure with the Giants and a lot of his great memories. So if you guys want to go back and take a look at his tweets from last week, I suggest you do that. It's very nostalgic, and if you're an emotional bastard like I am, you'll probably shed a few tears.
Yeah. One other thing I want to bring up before we get on out of here is, I for whatever reason, I was only 3 years old when it happened, but I went to school at St. Peter's Prep. I worked at St. Peter's Prep this past year. I feel a very strong attachment to that area, downtown Jersey City. And for whatever reason, just seeing certain, coverage of 9/11, and also being a football fan, I feel like the NFL does a pretty good job every year around the time of 9/11 to honor and remember. And I'm actually very excited for what they're going to do this year, now that it'll be 20 years. And the Giants are playing the Broncos, who they played September 10th, 2001. And Jim Fassel was the head coach. So I'm excited to see, how they're going to kind of remember, those events. And it's basically what I'm trying to say is Jim Fassel was our coach during that time, and during one of the nation's darkest times. And Jim Fassel and the Giants were part of this effort to try and bring us back from the darkness, and that effort of just providing entertainment. And I think there were some guys, even like Greg Camella, who were doubting, like, am I contributing enough to society and like just being a football player? But then they got voicemails from fans. So this one fan who actually worked in the World Trade Center, he went to the game in Denver, and he left Ernie Accorsi a voicemail on his machine, and said, if it wasn't for me being a Giants fan, I don't know if I would be alive today, because he would have went to work at the World Trade Center, and possibly would have, unfortunately,
he would not have been in Denver. Yeah.
Right. Passed away. So that really was a calling for the Giants to, we are here to provide a service for everybody. And that's to kind of forget about the crap that is life sometimes. And then they went into Kansas City the next time that they played a game. They went to Kansas City. They had a great victory. And Jim Fassel recalls that there's a picture that they took in the locker room where everybody's wearing their NYPD FDNY hats, and big team picture. Everybody's
it's a very
smiling.
Iconic picture. Yeah.
Yeah. Very iconic picture. And he said that is in his trophy case. So Jim Fassel being a part of that recovery post 9/11 is something that I'm also really going to remember him for as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought that up. You say he was a part of it, and I think he was more than a part of it. I think he was truly at the forefront of it all. And I know what he did and everything he did for the city, what he did with the team. And I know he was always raved about that. And I forget who brought it up. It might have been Accorsi on the K show last week that was talking about his exact efforts with 9/11 and how incredible him and his wife were. and the healing of New York City. And I mean, yes, the Giants play in New Jersey, but they're just as much New York as they are New Jersey. They are the city. And him being the face of trying to heal the tri-state area, doing everything he can as a football coach of a National Football League team is it's pretty special, and it's a true testament to the man he was, and just the legacy he will live on. And yeah, it's I'm struggling to remain sane here. It's why I wore my glasses, just in case the waterworks started. But I'm really glad that we have this show to come on here and be able to talk about Coach Fassel and the way I think he deserves to be talked about. So it's great stuff. Rest in peace, Coach Fassel.
All right. So thank you everybody for watching. Leave a comment. Let us know some of your favorite memories of Coach Fassel. We would love to hear it, especially, for those fans who maybe were around for a little bit before Snacks was, and then especially myself, from just the stuff that I read. And I'm very thankful that, people like Ernie Palladino have, written such great books and such great memories about such great men and people in this organization. So keep on bleeding blue. Thank you for watching this little bit of a somber episode. We will see you next week. And Snacks, say something nice.
I love Coach Fassel.